Silent Signs of Malnutrition. Professor Rex investigates. Number 05. Professor Rex 60 Plus, Season 02, Episode 05. There's a problem that could be happening inside your body right now as you watch this video, and millions of people over 60 simply have no idea about it. Many people believe that malnutrition is easy to recognize. They picture someone very thin, with a face marked by fatigue, unable to get up from a chair on their own. But the truth is much more frightening than that. You can be well-dressed. You can appear perfectly healthy to others. You can even be overweight, carrying a few extra pounds, and still be suffering from silent malnutrition, the kind that doesn't show in the mirror, but is slowly eroding the strength of your muscles, the clarity of your mind, and your ability to live the next 20 years with energy. I am Professor Rex, and today I want to talk to you as I would talk to an old friend, sitting on a porch at the end of a quiet afternoon. No rush, no fanfare, but with all the honesty that someone who has seen hundreds of cases similar to yours can offer. Before we continue, let me ask you a few questions. You don't need to answer aloud. Just answer them mentally, honestly. Are you feeling more tired than usual, even after a reasonable night's sleep? Have you noticed a loss of strength in recent months, especially in your hands, when opening a window or carrying a shopping bag? Are your clothes, the ones you wore a year or two ago, now looser than they should be? Do you feel less inclined to eat, even at times when you used to feel hungry? Have you been getting hurt more easily, with bruises appearing out of nowhere? Have you noticed that small cuts and scratches are taking longer to heal? If you answered yes to 1, 2, or even 3 of these questions, I need you to stay with me until the end, because what we're going to discover together today might be exactly the missing piece to explain why you don't feel the same anymore. Many people think that losing strength, tiring more easily, or having less appetite are just things of aging. It is this belief, more than anything else, that prevents millions of Americans over 60 from seeking help in time. And that's precisely what I want to investigate with you, sign by sign, as if we were putting together a puzzle. Before we delve into each sign in this investigation, it's worth understanding a central, simple idea that completely changes how we view nutrition after age 60. Calories and nutrients are not the same thing. It's perfectly possible to eat enough in quantity, feel full, and still be malnourished, because what the body really needs is not just volume of food, but the right amount of protein, vitamins, and minerals within those calories. A plate full of white rice, bread, and biscuits may seem like a hearty meal, but you may be giving your body far less than it actually needs to keep muscles strong, skin healthy, and the mind sharp. This difference between eating a lot and eating well is at the heart of virtually all the signs we're going to investigate now. Let's start with the first sign, the one that often goes unnoticed even by the most attentive family members. Unexplained weight loss. Imagine this scene. A 68-year-old woman, living in a small town in rural Florida, had always been the active type of person who tended her own garden, cooked for her grandchildren on Sundays, and never missed her annual appointment with her primary care physician. One day, while weighing herself before a routine checkup, she realized she had lost almost 7 kilos in 6 months, without dieting or changing her exercise routine. She hadn't even noticed because the loss was gradual, almost imperceptible, a kilo here, another there. Only when the doctor compared the numbers in her electronic medical record did the alarm, silent until then, finally sound. This type of story repeats itself with alarming frequency. Unintentional weight loss, when it exceeds about 5% of body weight in 6 months or less, is considered by geriatricians to be one of the first warning signs of malnutrition in older people. And the reason this happens has a simple explanation. When the body does not receive enough calories and protein, it begins to consume its own reserves, first fat, then muscle. And that is precisely where the next sign of our investigation lies. Muscle weakness. Have you ever stopped to notice what it's like to climb stairs today compared to 5 years ago? Or what it's like to get up from a low chair without using your arms to push yourself up? These small details, which seem harmless, are actually one of the first places where malnutrition leaves its mark. Muscles need protein to maintain, repair, and strengthen themselves. When this protein is not available in sufficient quantities, the body literally begins to break down its own muscle tissue to obtain energy and amino acids for more urgent functions, such as keeping the heart beating and the brain functioning. Scientists have given this process a fancy name, sarcopenia, but you don't need to memorize the technical term. Just understand the concept behind it. It's the progressive loss of muscle mass and strength related to age, and it accelerates dramatically when the diet doesn't provide enough protein. And the most curious thing is that sarcopenia can occur even in people who maintain a stable weight or even in overweight people, because the problem isn't just how many calories you consume, but what kind of nutrients those calories carry. This brings us to the next chapter of our research, and this is one that has surprised doctors the most over the years: frequent falls. Imagine a 72-year-old retired man living in a quiet Arizona community who always enjoyed his morning walks before the desert heat became unbearable. In recent months, he began tripping over things he hadn't even noticed before. A small step, a garden hose, the doormat. His family, worried, suspected it was a vision or balance problem related to his inner ear. Tests came back normal. What no one had thought to investigate until a clinical nutritionist became involved was that the strength in his legs had significantly decreased, a direct reflection of muscle loss caused by insufficient protein and vitamin D intake. Vitamin D, in fact, deserves a paragraph of its own. Many people think of it only as the sunshine vitamin, but it plays a fundamental role in muscle strength and balance. People with vitamin D deficiency have a significantly higher risk of falls because this vitamin is directly involved in communication between the nerves and muscles of the legs. And as we age, our skin becomes less efficient at producing vitamin D from sunlight, which makes it even more important to pay attention to diet and, when necessary, talk to your doctor about supplementation. There's a detail that almost no one notices about protein. It's not stored by the body in the same way as fat. While the body can store fat reserves for months, it doesn't have an equivalent stockpile of protein to use when needed. This means that protein needs to be replenished almost every day through food so that muscles, skin, hair, nails, and even the immune system continue to receive the necessary materials to rebuild themselves. That's why many nutritionists recommend distributing protein intake throughout the day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, instead of concentrating it all in a single meal, as often happens in the traditional American dinner. The next sign we're going to investigate together is one of the most treacherous of all, because it's often mistaken for depression or simply normal tiredness with age: constant fatigue. Have you ever felt that sensation of waking up already tired, as if the night's sleep had been absolutely useless? This type of fatigue, when it persists for weeks, deserves attention. The human body functions like a kind of power plant, and this plant depends on iron, vitamin B12, magnesium, and sufficient calories to function at full capacity. When any of these components are lacking, the feeling is exactly that: a tiredness that doesn't go away no matter how much you sleep. Vitamin B12, in particular, has a direct relationship with energy and the functioning of the nervous system. And here's a detail that very few people know. The body's ability to absorb vitamin B12 naturally decreases with age because the stomach produces less acid. And this acid is essential for releasing B12 from food. This means that even if someone eats exactly the same amount of meat, eggs, or dairy products as they did at age 40, their body may be absorbing much less of this vitamin now at age 60, 70, or 80. That's why, during annual medical checkups, many doctors recommend periodic checkups of B12 levels in older patients. Now we come to a sign that often goes completely unnoticed because it's too subtle for most families to pick up on: loss of appetite. Imagine a 65-year-old man, recently widowed, living in a small town in Ohio. After the loss of his wife, he began eating alone, without haste, without the same effort he put into his meals as before. Gradually, his appetite decreased, not due to illness, not by conscious choice, simply because eating alone, every day without the company of someone who was always by his side, takes away the pleasure of eating. This type of situation is more common than you might think, and it has a name in geriatrics. Anorexia of aging, a technical term, but one that perfectly describes this natural and progressive reduction in appetite that many older people face, whether for emotional, social, or purely biological reasons, since the hormones that signal hunger and satiety also change with age. And the next sign is directly related to that: changes in taste. Have you ever noticed that certain foods that once tasted wonderful now seem bland? This isn't your imagination. Taste buds really do lose sensitivity over the years, and certain nutritional deficiencies, especially zinc, can accelerate this loss even further. Zinc is a fascinating mineral. It participates in the regeneration of taste buds, wound healing, and the functioning of the immune system, all at the same time. When zinc levels drop, food literally loses some of its flavor, creating a dangerous cycle. Because the food no longer tastes good, the person eats less, and because they eat less, they absorb even less zinc. And it is precisely this cycle that leads us to the next chapter of our investigation, one of the most physically visible signs, but one of the least associated with diet by most people: wounds that take a long time to heal. A patient at a geriatric care clinic in California, for example, reported to her doctor that a simple scratch on her arm, the kind that would normally heal in a few days, took almost 3 weeks to close completely. The reason, discovered after blood tests, was a combination of low levels of protein and vitamin C. Protein is literally the building material used by the body to repair tissues, and vitamin C is essential for the formation of collagen, the substance that gives structure to the skin. Without sufficient amounts of these two elements, the healing process, which should be quick and efficient, becomes slow, drawn out, and in some cases dangerous, since wounds left open for too long increase the risk of infection. There is a trio of signs that often appear together, almost as if they were talking to each other, but which most people attribute only to vanity or the natural aging process: thin skin, weaker hair, and brittle nails. Have you noticed that your skin seems thinner than before, almost transparent in some areas, with bruises appearing just from lightly touching furniture? Skin is actually one of the organs that most depends on protein, vitamin C, and essential fatty acids to remain firm and elastic. When these nutrients are scarce, collagen production decreases, and the skin loses some of its thickness and its ability to protect itself against minor daily impacts. The same applies to hair. A person who has always had thick, strong hair may suddenly notice that it is falling out more than usual, or that it has become thin, lifeless, and brittle when combing. Hair strands are mainly composed of a protein called keratin, and when the body is nutritionally deficient, it prioritizes vital organs such as the heart and brain, leaving structures like hair and nails last in line for nutrition. These structures are not essential for immediate survival, but they serve as a true external thermometer of what is happening internally. And nails follow the exact same logic. Nails that become brittle, crack easily, or develop grooves and white spots usually reflect deficiencies in protein, zinc, iron, and biotin. It's such a subtle sign, so easy to disguise with nail polish or simply ignore, that it's rarely mentioned in a medical consultation. even though it's often one of the first visible signs that something needs attention. And speaking of infections, here's another important finding from our research: recurrent infections. Have you noticed that you're catching colds more often than you used to? Or that urinary tract infections seem to return even after treatment? The immune system depends directly on good nutrition to function properly. Proteins, zinc, iron, and vitamins A, C, and D together form a kind of defense army within the body. When any of these nutrients are lacking, this army is weakened, with fewer soldiers available to fight viruses and bacteria, which explains why infections that were once rare begin to become frequent. There's a detail about hydration that almost no one associates with malnutrition, but which geriatricians consider fundamental: water. Many people over 60 naturally feel less thirsty than they did decades ago because the internal mechanisms that signal the need to drink water also become less sensitive over time. The problem is that dehydration, even mild dehydration, can worsen practically all the signs we are investigating. It increases fatigue, worsens mental confusion, reduces muscle strength, and even hinders wound healing, since the blood, which carries nutrients to the tissues, needs sufficient water to circulate properly. That's why many doctors, during the annual checkup, ask how many glasses of water the patient usually drinks per day. A simple but revealing question. And since we're talking about essential minerals, it's worth investigating the role of calcium and magnesium, two elements that work as partners within the body. Calcium is known to everyone as the bone mineral, but few know that it also participates in muscle contraction, including the heart muscle. Magnesium, in turn, functions almost like a silent regulator, helping hundreds of chemical reactions in the body to occur correctly, from energy production within cells to muscle relaxation after physical exertion. When these two minerals are lacking, the result can include nighttime cramps, a strange feeling of generalized weakness, and, in more advanced cases, a higher risk of bone fractures. This brings us to a concept that many Americans over 60 have heard mentioned during checkups, but which is rarely clearly explained: low-grade inflammation related to aging. Unlike acute inflammation, which appears after an ankle sprain with visible redness and swelling, this inflammation is silent, almost invisible, but constantly present in the body at a low, yet continuous level. It accelerates muscle mass loss, hinders nutrient absorption, and directly contributes to many of the signs we've discussed so far. And, interestingly, a diet low in quality protein, colorful vegetables, and omega-3 fatty acids, found in fish like salmon and sardines, tends to further fuel this inflammatory process, creating a self-reinforcing cycle year after year. Now, there is a group of signs that tends to frighten families more than the patients themselves, because it involves the mind, mental confusion, and forgetfulness. It's natural to immediately think of more serious conditions when an older person starts forgetting names, appointments, or where they left their house keys. But before jumping to conclusions, it's worth knowing that malnutrition, especially vitamin B12 and iron deficiencies, can cause symptoms that mimic more serious cognitive problems. The human brain consumes an impressive amount of energy and nutrients to function properly. And when these nutrients are scarce, mental clarity is one of the first functions to be affected. That's why many geriatricians, when evaluating a patient with complaints of forgetfulness, begin by ordering tests that assess nutritional status before proceeding to more invasive investigations. A case that well illustrates this confusion is that of an 81-year-old man, a resident of a small town in rural Ohio, whose family had already begun to emotionally prepare for a possible dementia diagnosis after noticing frequent forgetfulness and some disorientation in simple conversations. Before any definitive conclusion, the family doctor ordered a complete panel of tests, including vitamin B12 and iron levels. The results surprised everyone. the B12 levels were extremely low. With proper supplementation, guided and monitored by the doctor, within a few weeks, the family noticed a significant difference in the clarity of conversations and in daily memory. This does not mean that all mental confusion has this origin, but it shows why it is worthwhile to investigate the cause before accepting any label as definitive. The next sign is perhaps the most underestimated of all, because most people simply attribute it to personality: excessive daytime sleepiness. Feeling the urge to nap after lunch is normal to a certain extent, but when this drowsiness becomes constant, when it seems impossible to keep your eyes open during a conversation, a movie, or even while driving, it deserves attention. When the body is in a caloric and nutritional deficit, it enters an energy-saving mode, reducing energy expenditure on activities that are not considered essential for immediate survival. Unfortunately, this includes the disposition for social activities, hobbies, and even longer conversations. And this leads us to another sign often mistaken for a purely emotional problem: discouragement. It's important to make it clear that I'm not saying that all sadness or lack of energy originates from diet. Human emotions are complex, and each person deserves to be heard with all the attention their story demands. But there is a real and proven connection between certain nutritional deficiencies, such as vitamin B12, folic acid, and omega-3, and mood changes. The brain, to produce the neurotransmitters responsible for feelings of well-being, needs these nutrients as raw materials. When they are lacking, the body's mood factory simply doesn't have enough inputs to work at full capacity. Returning to the physical signs, we come to one of the most practical to observe in everyday life: decreased strength in the hands. Have you ever had difficulty opening a glass lid that you used to open effortlessly? Or noticed that holding a full cup of coffee seems to require more attention than before? Interestingly, hand grip strength is used by doctors and researchers around the world as a reliable indicator of overall body muscle strength and, by extension, a person's nutritional status. There are even simple devices called dynamometers used in routine checkups precisely to measure this strength, because it tends to reflect quite accurately what is happening with the musculature as a whole. Directly linked to this sign is another: loss of balance. Many people associate loss of balance exclusively with inner ear problems or neurological issues. And, in fact, these causes exist and need to be investigated by a doctor. But balance also depends deeply on muscle strength in the legs, core, and ankles, as well as adequate levels of magnesium and potassium, essential minerals for proper communication between nerves and muscles. When muscles weaken due to lack of nutrients, the body loses some of its ability to make fine and quick adjustments, those automatic micro-adjustments that prevent a fall when we misstep. And speaking of legs, there's another very telling sign: difficulty climbing stairs. A 70-year-old woman living in a quiet neighborhood in Texas told her doctor that she needed to stop halfway up the stairs at home to rest, something that had never happened before. She thought it was simply a sign of aging, but after a complete nutritional assessment, it was identified that her protein levels were well below the recommended levels for her age, which was directly related to the loss of strength in her thigh muscles, the main muscles responsible for this stair climbing movement. Here's a curious detail that almost no one notices. Many people over 60 don't consume enough protein simply because chewing meat has become more difficult, whether due to dental issues or the use of dentures. Without realizing it, these people naturally replace firmer proteins with softer foods, generally rich in carbohydrates and poor in protein, which creates, over months and years, a silent deficit that gradually erodes muscle strength. Returning to clothing, the next sign is one of the most visual of all: clothes becoming too loose on the body. This sign is usually noticed first by others, even before the person themselves realizes it. A son, a granddaughter, a longtime friend might comment, "You've lost weight. Is everything all right?" Often this question is answered with a simple, "Oh, it must be because I haven't been eating as much lately," without anyone stopping to investigate the reason behind this change in appetite or weight. And this brings us back, closing the circle of our investigation, to the sign that is often the first to appear, although it is usually the last to be identified. The reduction of muscle mass, visible especially in the arms, thighs, and shoulders, where the skin seems to loose a little more than before, as if the body had literally become smaller on the inside. Now that we've investigated all these signs together, I want to pause to talk about something more important than any list of symptoms: the real hope that this can be reversed. Let me tell you the story of a 74-year-old man from Georgia who, 2 years ago, could barely walk to the mailbox without experiencing shortness of breath and weakness in his legs. After a routine annual checkup with his primary care physician, which included a more detailed nutritional assessment, it was identified that he was consuming less than half the recommended protein intake for his age and weight. With small changes, including eggs for breakfast, Greek yogurt as an afternoon snack, fish twice a week, and doctor-recommended supplementation, in just a few months he reported feeling more energetic. Within a year, he was walking distances he hadn't been able to cover in a long time. And, most excitingly, he was able to travel to visit his grandchildren, something he had avoided for fear of not being able to handle the fatigue of the trip. Another story worth sharing is that of a 79-year-old woman living in a small retirement community in South Carolina. She had lived alone since her husband passed away, and her family, although present by phone almost every day, lived hours away. Gradually, she lost interest in cooking complete meals, replacing them with toast, biscuits, and coffee, quick, easy-to-prepare meals for one person. During a holiday visit, her daughter noticed that her mother seemed more frail, slower to walk, and insisted she schedule a full checkup, including blood tests. The results showed low levels of protein, iron, and vitamin D. With the help of a nutritionist and small changes, protein shakes for breakfast, boiled eggs as a snack, a light walk outdoors to help with natural vitamin D production, in a few months she reported feeling 10 years younger. In her own words during a follow-up appointment, "Today, she started cooking for her grandchildren again when they visit, something she had stopped doing, thinking she no longer had the energy for it." Stories like this repeat themselves more often than one might imagine, precisely because the human body, even after 60, 70, or 80 years of age, maintains an impressive capacity to recover when it receives the nutrients it needs. Muscles respond to the right stimulus. The immune system strengthens. Energy returns. And with it comes the desire to do the things that make life worthwhile. Playing with grandchildren in the backyard, traveling to see family, walking through the neighborhood on a cool morning, sitting at the table and truly enjoying the meal instead of eating only out of obligation. Before we conclude our investigation today, I want you to reflect honestly. Have you noticed any of these signs in yourself, or perhaps in someone you love? How long has this been happening? Did you discuss this with your doctor during your last appointment, or did you simply let it go, attributing it all to age? Do you know anyone, perhaps a relative, a neighbor, or a friend, who might be going through something similar right now without knowing it? If any of these questions resonated with you in any way, there's a simple yet powerful step you can take this week. Schedule a conversation with your doctor, your primary care physician, and specifically mention these signs. If it makes sense, ask for a more comprehensive nutritional assessment. Medicare, in many cases, covers this type of assessment within the annual preventive checkup, meaning this conversation may be more accessible than you think. Growing old doesn't have to mean losing strength, mental clarity, or the joy of living. The knowledge we share today has the power to change destinies. to transform years that could be lived with fatigue and limitations into years lived with energy, presence, and purpose. Small actions, a more thoughtful meal, an honest conversation with the doctor, a blood test that investigates what really matters, make a huge difference, much greater than one might imagine at first glance. It's never too late to regain strength. It's never too late to care for your body with the affection it deserves after decades of work and dedication. And it's never too late to give yourself or someone you love the chance to live the coming years with better health, more energy, and a higher quality of life. And if you've made it this far, carefully observing each of these signs, I want you to know one thing. The simple fact that you are seeking to better understand your own body or the body of someone you love is already in itself a huge step. Most people spend their entire lives ignoring small signs, attributing everything to luck, genetics, or simply age, without ever stopping to investigate the real causes. Today, you chose to do things differently, and this choice, however small it may seem now, could be exactly what defines your next 10, 15, 20 years of life. If this video helped you in any way, click like. Subscribe to Professor Rex 60+. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episodes of our investigation into health and longevity. And if you can, share this video with someone you love, perhaps a parent, a neighbor, or a dear friend. This information, as simple as it seems, may be exactly what that person needed to hear today. Thanks for watching until the end. See you in the next episode.